What's up, everybody? Alessandro here from Tony'sPicks.com. We're breaking down the University of Georgia Bulldogs today. Big time college football season preview. And we'll get right into it. Last year they went 11-3, lost in the Sugar Bowl to Notre Dame in that playoff game, 23-10. Defensive skirmish that was. Gunnar Stockton was thrown into the helm after Carson Beck got hurt. We're going to get into Carson Beck in a minute. Gunnar Stockton's likely to be the starter this year, from what he done last year, and then, being kind of the oldest guy returning. But do I love him? I'm not necessarily in love with him. He has shown a little bit of the ability to run. I mean, that's not looking at his stats. Minus 21 yards rushing, I think he had against Notre Dame. It was ugly. But he has the ability to at least do a read option type, has as much as the Bennett kid did at Georgia there. And I think he could totally do it. Just the same way, game manage and, feed all these weapons that are surrounding him we're about to get into, But yeah, losing Carson Beck was huge for the Georgia Bulldogs because that's 7,500 yards, 52 touchdowns in the last 2 seasons. I mean, this guy was all SEC. It's rough losing a kid like that when, having him come back this year, you're thinking, it's national championship for sure all the way. I mean, I'm sure they still have that in the back of their mind, just University of Georgia we're talking about. That's just expected at this point. But I just simply don't think they have the team this year. I mean, that's just starting at the quarterback spot. But we'll get into the running backs and the wide receivers here now. Yeah, like at the running back spot, you got Nate Frazier expected to be, the number one back. 5'10", 210. What is he out of Mater Dei High School out there in Santa Ana, California? You already know how I feel about that Mater Dei High School. Tons of guys have been putting in the pros, mostly quarterbacks, but no, that's a very, very highly touted school to come out of high school. Dominated the state of California. Then you got this big bruiser, Roderick Robinson, 6'1", 235, going to back him up. So they're going to have that, thunder and lightning type 1-2 punch, Mr. Outside, Mr. Inside type running attack, it looks like there. But then they welcome in, the transfer from Illinois, Josh McCray. This kid, 117 carries, 609 yards, 10 touchdowns. He was kind of like the platoon back last year for this Illinois rushing attack. And 10 touchdowns as a backup running back's pretty impressive if you ask me. I'd like to see what he can do behind this Georgia offensive line and, all these weapons surrounding him. He's not going to be the focal point. He was the focal point. Even though he was the second back, when he was in there, he was the focal point. It's going to be interesting to see how he does. But, like I said, with him running behind this O-line, this Georgia O-line historically is just one of the best. Let's just call it what it is here. The last 6 years, they've put 11 kids in the draft. Offensive linemen. I'm just talking offensive linemen. The last 6 years, they've put 11 offensive linemen in the draft. Just let that sink in. This year alone, they lost 3 kids off their team. Where are they? The Daniel Calhoun. I'm losing these names, man. Dylan Fairchild. Excuse me, not Dylan Calhoun. Dylan Fairchild, Jarrett Wilson. Tate Ratledge. Those 3 guys, losing those 3 guys up front is huge for Georgia. But they have 4 stars and 5 stars just littered throughout this roster. That I was naming some of the guys that are going to be replacing them. Excuse me. Center Drew Bobo, he was a returning starter last year, 30 starts in his career. Micah Morris, Monroe Freeling, these guys were on the team last year, 12 games, and they both each had 4 or 5 starts as well. This offensive line and defensive line at Georgia, they rotate. Those 5 are not going to be there the whole entire game. It's not going to be all 5 guys all 60 minutes. They will have 8, 9, 10 guys rotating in, and they will stay fresh all 4 quarters. And just it's something that's attributed to their recruiting that they've been able to do this. Not a lot of colleges have this luxury of just being able to. Because the reason why I say this, they got these young kids, freshman standout, Juan Gaston, 5-star, 6'7", 365 pounds coming in. Yeah, I think he's a little big, a little chunky. They're going to get the baby fat off, and he's going to be about 330 in mauling dudes. You got another one, the Daniel Calhoun kid I was trying to allude to, 6'6" kid, 330, 5-star as well when he was coming in. Just surrounded by talent. Just completely surrounded by talent. These running backs, these wide receivers, with the offensive line that they have. It's going to be a luxury, I think, sometimes for Gunnar Stockton to just walk right in and keep the ball rolling. It's not that hard when you have all these, weapons around you. That lead, when I'm talking about these weapons, they're losing Lovett, they're losing Smith. Both guys, went to the draft. But senior Dylan Bell's back, 466 last year. This Colby Young kid I'm hearing is going to emerge into a big-time, player here his final year, senior. 149 yards, only 2 touchdowns last year. So they're really expecting a big jump with him. But, they add in this 5-star, the Zachariah Branch kid. Only 823 yards in 2 years at USC. And, a lot more was expected of him as this kid was highly touted coming out of Cali. Went to USC, people were saying Heisman freshman season. Don't get me wrong, I like the kid. I think he has a lot of talent. And I think, Kirby's going to find a way to get him open. Expect a bigger role for him. He's going to be catching those screens and bubbles, running those jet sweeps. He's going to have a presence in the return game. So I see him definitely having, his hands all over the ball pretty much when it comes to being in the Georgia Bulldogs. But, you got those 2 backs that I alluded to earlier in this offensive line. Don't get me wrong. And this quarterback, first-year starter, they're going to be pounding the rock. Let's just call it what it is. It's going to be 30 to 40 carries a game. If Gunnar Stockton only has to throw 15 passes and go, 9 for 15, 78 yards and a touchdown, and they win the game 35-14, I think everybody will be happy because it seems like that's how they've been having to win games too recently. Since the Aaron Murray years or maybe Stafford years where they were able to open up, this Beck kid that they're losing was the type of kid that they thought they could start opening up the offense. But, losing him now, they're stuck. And maybe Gunnar Stockton winds up being somebody, Like I said, all these weapons, the Zachariah Branch, Lovett. Who else? Oscar Delp at tight ends, another kid I haven't even mentioned. He's first round, second round grade. The scouts are going, drooling over him. 6'5", 250 type kid. Kind of can do it all in the run game. Great pass game, short pass game at least. But like I said, with the big body, he's had to sit behind Brock Bowers, and he's not a Brock Bowers. Brock Bowers is a H-back, tight end type. Almost running back if you wanted to let him play some running back. Obviously, he can go out and play wide receiver. He's special, Brock Bowers. But this Oscar Delp is just another one, though, that's definitely going to go in the league. And, having him on your college roster is nice. Why wouldn't you want to have an NFL tight end on your college roster, For the defense, though, 20.6 points per game they gave up last year. 23rd in the nation. That's not bad at all. I think Kirby will have a plethora of players to choose from, even though he's losing quite a bit. Malachi Starks comes to mind. That kid was just always around the ball, led the team in interceptions last year. Jordan Hall, Christian Miller is going to be up front, though, for them this year. Those are 2 NFL kids. I will say this D-line's probably not like the ones they've had in the past. They do have Xavier McLeod adding some depth in. Gabe Harris and Raylan Wilson will be out on the edge. They run this funky 3-4 type scheme here. Then you got the Mac, the Money, the Jack. That's what they call these linebackers. And now these guys are a lot similar to the Bama linebackers with about 10, 15 pounds on them. And, the main guy I'm thinking about here, that's, C.J. Allen. This kid's about 235, almost 240. Neck's big. He's your prototypical linebacker, and he is sideline to sideline, even though he's a little bit bigger than those guys I was alluding to. He is going to be, he's going to have 100 tackles this year, put it that way. 76 last year, limited time, played in 10 games. Excuse me, he did play in 15 games, but sparingly, 10 starts. 6'1", 235, I think he's going to straight roam the middle and, be this focal point of this offense, or defense, excuse me. At the jack position, though, it's more of a pass rushing type linebacker, one of those outside backers. They call it the jack. They're going to welcome in this Army transfer, Elo Madozi. 6'4", 240, 6.5 sacks last year. Having to go to an Army transfer is a little bit alarming. You would think Kirby would have had one of these 5 stars or 4 stars that he's recruited ready at this point. I mean, I guess Raylan Wilson's one of those guys that, is going to be on the other side. So, you know, it's something maybe that's how college football is nowadays. The kid from Army coming out, having a hell of a year last year, and now he's all of a sudden a Georgia Bulldog playing in the SEC. We'll see how he does. 6.5 sacks is not bad. If he goes and does that in the SEC, he'll probably get drafted. DBs, everybody's back on the secondary except Malachi Starks. Everett, Bolden at the, those two guys roaming back there, each with 40 solo tackles, 3 picks last year for Everett. That led the team as well with Malachi. Jonel Aguero at nickel's back. Kyron Jones, Ja'Cory Thomas. They welcome 2 transfers in, Zion Branch, Adrian Maddox. They're loaded back there. Kirby Smart's specialty, he played defensive back. He's got Will Muschamp as the defensive advisor. This is almost Saban-esque coaching squad that they have. That famous Saban coaching tree back at LSU. I'm not going to put it up that, but I mean, Kirby Smart, Will Muschamp with your defense is nothing better than that. On to what I actually think they're going to do, though, like season win total, it's all those question marks basically around the quarterback because I think he's set up very nicely. The O-line is going to have 8, 9, 10 guys. They're improving. Like I said, they lost 3 guys, but those kids are 4 stars and 5 stars, and Kirby just knows how to keep them rolling in. And another, like I said, 11 kids in the last 6 years have gotten drafted in that O-line. So I think they're going to protect them up front for the most part. It's just whether or not Gunnar Stockton's going to be able to read a defense, command the huddle, two-minute situations, also protect the football. That's the main thing, protect the football. He goes out there and starts giving the ball away. There's just no hope because I don't think they have the talent like previous years where they could afford to. No, now they're going to scrape by. We're about to get into it, Marshall's their home opener. Obviously, they're going to win this game. Will it be a scare? Maybe. I don't see it. I simply see a 48-14 Georgia slacking. Everybody thinks Gunnar Stockton's just good. Everything looks A-OK. Gunnar Stockton's the man. Then you got next week, another cupcake, Austin Peay. Again, everything's A-OK. He might only play the first 2 quarters of this Austin Peay game. You might see a lot of Puglisi in that Austin Peay game, and, you'll see, we got 2 good quarterbacks, all that talk. Georgia's 2-0, a lot of hype. Then they go to Tennessee, playing in Neyland, one of the loudest places to play. It's a venue I've got to go check out. It's on the bucket list. It's just an amazing place. It's one of the hardest places to play as well. It's why the SEC is the SEC. Not a lot of these conferences have multiple schools that, even when they're not at their best, Auburn, Tennessee right now, I would say, the atmosphere is still, Mississippi State, the atmosphere is still just, you can't even hear yourself. It's, it's insane. But I don't think it's going to really deter Georgia here. They've obviously experienced that before. Like I've said in the Alabama video, Tennessee's scrambling right now, trying to figure out an offense they could build around this quarterback, Joey Aguilar, who I'm not necessarily high on. I think this one could get ugly, but I see it, 38-24, 38-21. They might not let them get 20, Georgia all day there. So what? Now they'd be 3-0 going into the Bama game. And, I said Bama would lose to Georgia, no doubt, but I'd say talent for talent, it's a wash. It's going to come down to quarterback play. It sounds all cliche. It's going to come down to the quarterbacks. No, there's some times where the better quarterback doesn't necessarily win the game, and he has the better team around him. I would allude to maybe those Russell Wilson Seahawks against the Brady. Brady's obviously a better quarterback than Russell Wilson, but Russell Wilson had an impeccable defense to lean on. Marshawn Lynch, big wide receivers out there. And, Pete Carroll is a hell of a coach. You get me. So not necessarily the best quarterback always wins. That's what I'm trying to get at. And Alabama may be able to actually win this game here. it's gonna be closer, I think, now than people are starting to. I'm really starting to realize that Alabama and Georgia are going to be neck and neck this year, and it's very possible that both of them are 11-1. Texas may be the undefeated team, and now how many teams are they wanting to put into the college football playoff? Because you got Florida lurking out there, Ole Miss lurking out there, LSU lurking out there, Texas A&M lurking out there, that can easily get themselves into a 10-2, 9-3 is hard to make it. It's going to be hard to make it. 10-2 and up type record, and you have a shot at the playoffs. So that's what makes it interesting, that Bama Georgia game, because a lot's on the line right there, week 4. I'm going to say Georgia gets it done though. Like I said, 4-0. I think Kirby's just a little bit ahead of DeBoer right now. So yeah. The next game will be against Kentucky at home. I don't see Kentucky doing it. Every now and then Kentucky will scare you. I just don't see it this year. Then they play Auburn at Auburn. I alluded to Auburn a little bit in that Bama video again. Jackson Arnold expected to be the quarterback. If it's Ashton Daniels, the kid from Stanford, even, cool. I don't like any of them. I do think Ashton Daniels actually probably might be the better option. We saw that impeccable comeback against Colorado. It was Colorado now. But, no, that was insane. I remember actually having Stanford, money line before that. It was already a fat price. And then I remember seeing them down 21-0 and just being like, what's the point even checking the score? I went out and did something else. And then I see the final score. That's one of those, man, that I'll never forget where I was at, because I won money line. It was like plus 400, plus 500. And didn't ever watch a single snap of that. But anyways, that was a great one. On to the next game. I said Auburn, they'd win, clearly. So after the Auburn win, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and 0 you're looking at. Then they play Ole Miss at home. And I have them on upset alert here. You know how Rod's alluded to this kid Simmons that's supposed to be starting. Lane Kiffin's another elite recruiter. He's been pulling in top 5 classes, top 10 classes for the last 5-6 years now. He's built something here at Ole Miss that people are starting to get really excited about. I just think Georgia is going to be prepared for it. Do I see it being possibly a high-scoring game? Yes, because Ole Miss is going to have some tricks that is Georgia's not going to be able to see. But for the most part, Georgia will be prepared for it. I see maybe like a 38-35 type scare, 38-31 type scare. I like that 38 number. I don't know. Georgia's not going to be getting a lot into the 40s this year, I feel like, because they're going to be running the ball a lot. So, 38-28, one of those type of scores, but a scare for sure. And, if Ole Miss scores 40 on you, I don't think Georgia wins that game, put it that way. And, I'm not going to put it past them. With all this preseason hype I'm hearing about this kid from Simmons. So, we'll definitely be on upset alert, I think, with these Bulldogs here on that. But on to the next. You got a game here. I think they dominate. Florida Gators. I'm a diehard Florida Gator fan. I mean, grew up in Florida all my whole life. You guys know I've drove out to Vegas and been out here the last 7 years. But I'm Florida Gators through and through. I mean, I call it as I see it, though, and I think we're just straight fraudulent this year. It's the show me. I don't care what you say, what you do. I want to see the results at this point, and I'm sick of the excuses. So yeah, I mean, that's how I feel about Florida. They have to show me, and here against this Georgia team in the largest cocktail party in the world, I don't see it happening. I just don't. Even with Lagway and all the hype we have, we just have been out-recruited by Georgia for the last 10 years. We've been out-recruited by Bama for the last 20 years. We have become the stepbrother, the loner friend, just whatever you want to call Florida Gators, we've become that. And then Billy Napier is just a complete joke. I can rant on Florida all day long, but I need to move on. Georgia probably wins that huge. It was close last year, but that's because Carson Beck is a it wasn't even that close really, but I remember the game hanging around. That's just Carson Beck, being Carson Beck. The next game they play at Mississippi State, like I said, these cowbells, loud place to play, it won't matter. Just talent levels here to here, it's just not even close. I'm wanting to talk about that one. Okay, so now 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 W's. We got 9 W's. And they have to play Texas. At home, here's where I think they get their first loss. Arch Manning. That's going to be the difference in the game. As square as that sounds. It's just Gunnar Stockton is not Arch Manning. Arch Manning has just about as good of a team around him as what Gunnar Stockton has. Now, I would argue there's certain positions, of course, maybe the D linemen and those D-backs out there in Georgia. I think that's the elite of the elite. I don't know if Texas can match with those, even though, they'll tell you they do, and they'll show you those, 5 stars and 4 stars they got themselves. I don't know. My eyes tell me it's Georgia with a slightly better defense than Texas. But, they're still wrapped up playing that Big 12 style football. And in the SEC, sometimes you got to win these games 14-6. It just is what it is. And, we'll see if Texas is willing to be that type of team this year, a grind it out and grit team, or are they going to try to open up and spread everybody out? It's nice. You blow teams out, but somebody figures you out and you get down a couple scores. And then it's just snowballs because the only thing is big, throw. It's just snowball effect. The pass rushers are just, we know the pass is coming, just going. So, I don't know. That's a very interesting game, but I think at that point of the year, you'll really know if Arch Manning is the guy to take out these Bulldogs. Right now, I'm going to write that down as an L. I'm going to say that's their only L this year. Because the next week they play Charlotte. The following week they play Georgia Tech, which was a scare last year. But I do think they get that done. They would be 11-1, 11-1 Bama, 11-1 Georgia, and very, very possibly an 11-1 Texas. I have to go look at their schedule, of course. But it's very doable. And then you start questioning how many SEC teams need to go in, especially if one of them is undefeated. So that's one for sure. 2 of them go 11-1. And then you got a couple 10-2 teams that when you look over there, the Big Ten, Indiana is who they're trying to put in now. Come on, that was a joke last year. Indiana were fraudulent, and we all knew it the whole time. I hammered Notre Dame that game, but that's besides the point. If there's any teams you guys want me to break down, comment down below. Your favorite team, your favorite Heisman long shot for this season. Whatever, who's going to get drafted first overall, anything you want, who's going to win the national championship, drop it down below. Of course, drop a like, hit the subscribe button, check out everything we got on Tony'sPicks.com, and as you guys already know, check out the website, Tony'sPicks.com, and let's make some money, guys. Let's make some money. Peace.